Welcome to the MikePhelanCoaching.com podcast. Here we are for further episodes on football. Mike Phelan and Paul McGuinness sat with me again today, and what we're going to look at today is some of the finer detail of football and specific topics. Thanks again to Burnley FC in the community and also Classic Football Shirts for sponsoring and providing facilities for the podcast. So without further ado, we'll get into a discussion with our two guests, finer details of football, and we're going to go through various things here, different positions as we progress. One of the first things I want to address, and come to yourself if I can, Mike, defending. You were fortunate enough to work at Manchester United for a long period of time, and sort of that 2009 through to 11, you dominated the Premier League, dominated Europe, 3 Champions League finals, and you had players such as Vidic, Ferdinand, Brown, O'Shea in those central positions. What do they bring to the table? Who are these individuals and what's their skill sets?
Well, they all bring different aspects to the game. You know, it's a jigsaw puzzle. The best of times is creating a football team, but defending is an art. Sometimes it's a forgotten art now because we talk about, you know, being progressive and playing out from the back, but defenders have developed over a period of time. Ultimately, a defender's job is in the title. Defend your goals, defend your goalkeeper, and stop the opposition from penetrating and scoring goals. So the art of defending is pretty specific.
And just to sort of set the scene, we've sort of gone into Mike's past there. I'm going to bring up a name of a current player, Virgil van Dijk. Lots of people know him, Liverpool centre-back, Premier League winner. The modern defender, have they changed, Paul, or is it still similar?
No, I think it's as Mick says, it is an art, and quite often what you get with coaching, they'll talk to the players and they'll talk along. Well, we've done this skillful stuff, and we've done this work here on attacking play, and now's the hard work, the defending, as if it's all running, hard work, so on. But really, it's a craft in itself, and a teamwork craft where you can defend from the front, who might force players one way, the midfield, and then it might well be that the defenders are the ones who pick up the pieces at the end through good positional play. And definitely Van Dijk playing at Liverpool, that's what they've done over the last few years with Klopp. The front players will guide one way, the others will press, and then he'll read it and bring it down his chest or head it down to someone. And definitely positional play, reading the game, he's without one of the very good.
Defending now is part and parcel of setting traps as well in the football field. To not necessarily tackle. Tackling is still allowed in the game, but it's more intercept and keep the flow of the game, then going from defensive situations into attacking ones. So there's a lot more aspects to defending than just now standing in a back 4, a back 3, defending your goal. There is a little bit more involved in technique and positional play, like Paul says, and being aware of the field and your colleagues around you. That's the art of defending.
You think of Van Dijk, you can go right through the sort of model I've used in the last few years is like, straight away positioning. Well, if he's in a 2v1, how does he position between the two players? So there's the part of the art of it. Then what's his body orientation so that he's ready to move and direct them one way? Or if the ball goes, he's now made it a 2v1, the goalkeeper and him against the one player. You know, and all of that is with scanning. Then it's the footwork, the decision making, and sometimes with defenders even it's a little bit disguised to make it look as though you're going to do one thing and then quickly change to doing another, and the timing. So all those things come into it, and all of them really need to be taught or players put into situations where they're going to happen over and over again.
Have they got a greater skill set these days? I mean, we talked about Van Dijk there. There's John Stones as well, that quite often in the last couple of Premier League and Champions League campaigns, they're almost just behind the forwards, aren't they, at some point, with the way they advance themselves up the pitch? Is that defending? I think
what's changed ultimately is the back pass rule created a different sort of start to defending or end to defending. You know, the keepers now have to be competent on the ground. They can't just pick it up now they can, but they play more. They are part defender now, a goalkeeper, more than they've ever been. But the defender's relationship with the goalkeeper has probably changed from that point of view, because now there's not just defending, there's the art of positional play. When you're with the ball, when you're without the ball, and that relationship across the defending spectrum comes from not just you and the goalkeeper, but your midfield players and your forwards. Where is the start of defending and where is the finishing?
Yeah, I think so.
And like on connections, aren't you, Paul?
Yeah, well, I think a big one here, Mick just said, the game's changed. So, 20 years ago, nearly every goal kick's hit long, you've got a header, a knockdown, and so on. Now, because the rules have allowed you to play out to someone in the box, that means you're starting a good nearly 18 yards deeper than you would have done. The goalkeeper might have thrown it out to the fullback who's wide and outside the box. Now he's almost on the goal line. So I was talking, as part of my job with the FA over the last few years, I was talking to some top defenders and Johnny Evans. Johnny Evans said, well, the difference now is you'd have been very rare you'd go 10 yards in the opponent's half as a centre half in the old days. But now you have to, because the high press means that everybody's got to lock on. And a really interesting point he made was, he said, so now I will go virtually level with that striker, level with him as the ball's coming in, because if not, he might be back saying, well, if it goes over my head, I've got to get forward. But he said, if you go and as you move forward, you challenge for the ball, then it's more likely the referee will give a free kick because he sees that momentum going forward. But if you're already alongside him and now you stick a leg in to spoil and so on. So there's the craft that Mick was talking about before. And you're right, it probably has changed because that wouldn't have happened. That would have happened maybe 30 yards further back in the old days. Whereas now you've got to be there. And as a consequence, all the defenders really need to be quick because there's so much space behind, or they adapt their body position. I think it was John Stones did a great interview where he's saying, well, we're always on the half turn so that we can go forward or we can go back. And those little details make a big difference. From square on, I've got another step before a turn, and that makes the difference.
I think it's also important to understand defending is not just defending against a body, it's defending space as well.
Yeah.
And that's what the modern defender now has to understand.
Have they got more space to deal with now because of the advent of wing back speed?
Probably, but now, the defending now, the profile of probably a defender now, and we don't really talk about centre-halves anymore, we talk about defenders, that's across the board. So, we've got possibly at times midfield players who play defenders now. We have midfield defenders now, or defensive midfield players. We have attacking midfield players. So they're getting categorised a little bit more. But ultimately, you've got to be comfortable in the position you play, but you've got to be comfortable in the space you play in as well. That's really important to relate on the football field. And also, the practices that come out of that is depending on the size of the field, because there's variations in different stadiums they play in, and it all looks and feels a little bit different. You know your own stadium because you practice on it, and you know your own set of skills. But when you transfer that out there into different grounds, it is a slightly different feeling. So players have to understand space, marking, but also actually defending your goal is really, really important.
Just on that, you were a defender yourself.
I try to see it.
Is there a mentality aspect? Because your job is ultimately to make sure the opponent doesn't score.
Yeah, there's an idea in your head of what your position as a defender looks like. Then obviously you've got to combine now with your fellow teammates. So, if you're a full-back or you're a centre-back, you have certain players alongside you or in your vicinity that you link with most of the time. So when coaches talk about, partnering up or maybe two or three of you playing in a certain area of the field, that is your, if you want to call it a zone, but that's the area you predominantly operate in, and that requires a lot of practice between you in order to get that association between each other. So from a defending point of view, a lot of it is focus and concentration. A lot of it is being in the right place at the right time, and we see a lot of defenders now that don't actually make challenges and tackles, but they're in they know where the ball is going to be at that moment in time. So that's an instinct. You find that instinct through practice. It's not just a natural thing. More and more work you do on it, you find yourself standing in the right position at the right time. And we've all witnessed certain things and going, wow, what a great clearance that is, or he's in the right place. Why can't they beat that man? But they do have a way, defenders, of finding to be in the right place at the right time. The good defenders, the top defenders do that.
I think for coaches, grassroots coaches or starting off, academy coaches and so on, the key to there is to really make it interesting for the players, that they see it as a craft, they see it as a challenge, it's the duel. Now, nowadays you can't slide in six studs up, and you've got to be careful on your tackling. Sure, we want good, clean tackles, but one of the best ways to get players to understand the role and so on, and the cues and positional play, is to say, well, okay, let's see if we can win the ball back without tackling. So here we're trying to focus on interceptions maybe. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, now it's for positional play. I see the ball coming across. The ball might go. Now I've got to read the eye contact before it actually goes over there of the two players. So I think, we might be hitting it next. So you're looking at the opponent. So I'm now looking at the opponent's eyes with the man on the ball, or before he receives that ball, I'm looking at him. Now, what's his body position telling me? Now, where's his position? Now, am I getting ready? But also, I've got to maybe be crafty and make it look like, I'm not interested. I'm not on my mark.
So you're trying to tempt them to do it.
So I'm trying to tempt them to do it. And then as it goes, I might be in. If he's not looked over his shoulder, I'll look at his head. If he's not looked for me, then I might be able to get in first. I call it pickpocket, because you've come without him looking and he doesn't know you're there. You've pickpocket the ball. Now that would be the best option. And the best option, you play it forward and you're on the attack. But the next one might be he has a touch, or you spoil it. So you just get a toe in, you get it away to one of your players, you knock it out for a throw in. The next one after that for me is if he has a touch, and now you just steal it off him. Because now I think getting your body between the ball and the man is really important. So all of those things are the craft that we want, and that relies on good footwork. So what foot do I start with? How quick do I go over that? My body work, am I using my arms? So all these are things that we would want to bring in so that the coaches understand, the players, no, it's a craft, this. Your footwork's a craft, your scanning is a craft. It's part of being crafty to steal the ball off.
There is an element of non-contact defending now, isn't there, in the game, where we don't have that physical contact anymore. There are still players who do love the physical contact, but a lot of them now have sort of gone stage 2, stage 3, where that little bit of space, and like you say, timing and imagination and reading of the game enables you to not be physically tight, but you can actually still defend your area and still defend your space. And I think that goes back to exactly what Paul's saying. There's technique in that, there's concentration in that, there's using movements in your body and how you do that. A lot of stuff like, are you straight backed or are you more crouched? Are you sort of a competitive defender who's ready to intercept and everything, but there's certain positions you take up doing that in order to be first. Yeah. Because you hear it all the time, be first, be first, be first. Well, what does that actually mean? Where's your position? How can you be first? If the forward's there and you're behind the forward, how can you be first? Are you at the side? Oh, that's a little bit different. Are you at an angle? Are you a bit of distance? Do you tighten up when he receives the ball, or do you tighten up before he receives the ball? All these things are practices and are definitely the art of defending.
Yeah, and I think the big thing is for defenders, sometimes you can't win it. So now you've got to get in a position where you're maybe jockeying, dueling, and the big thing for the defender then is to be stable. You want to keep that stable, so you're forcing them one way, and the attacker wants to disrupt you, wants to send you one way and go the other. So now you've got to be really ready for that, because they have the lead. The attacker, he's throwing the first punch, so you have to be ready to react to it. Now then you get a lot of mistakes, really, because you get people jockeying and they're jumping, jumping up in the air. Now, if they make the move while you're in the air, then you can't push off. So the coach we had at Man United, that Gary Neville had, and a lot of the coaches that I had was Eric Harrison, and he would say, no, dig your studs in the ground when you're jockeying, be ready to push off. And if they did push off, you were then ready. So part of the secret and the skill of a defender is being able to transition from one movement to the next, to change speed quickly, to stop and start, to mirror the defender, to mirror the attacker, or to change direction again. So one of the key ones he taught me, and never forgotten it, was if you go to block down the line, so you might go to put your foot up to block the ball. If you put your foot up and you keep it up in the air and he checks back, then you can't push off. So he taught us to put our foot up and stamp down, so that if we went bang, our foot was then ready to push off again. So it's only a small detail, but it's like, might be the detail that means you then block the next cross. So that idea of stability in the duel would be really good. So if you don't win it, if you can't get your body between, you're jockeying. Now, can you jockey and show the one way? Now, if he comes inside you, how quick can you turn your hips to go back that way? So here's the practice. You've got to say, like, if he comes back out, can I go this way? Now, if he knocks it and goes, how quickly can you now run sideways? You have to run crossover steps. Now, if it goes again, can you turn and run forward? Now, all of those things, the transitions between each movement and each speed is really important. And then you went back to the great defenders. I remember the duel that Ronaldo had in the Euros with with Cole was unbelievable. And it was the two of them like gladiators. Two top class players, and that was one of the best duels I can remember. Yeah.
And in terms of, there's a lot of detail there, absolutely no doubt about that, which I'm sure the viewers and coaches will find fantastic. Getting this into an academy system and into young players or even grassroots, is this a long process? When does it start? 10, 12? How long does it go on? I think I'm probably right in saying that defenders tend to make the debuts a little bit later than midfielders and forwards, and the careers are a little longer. It seems like a very detailed process.
Yeah, and one of the sort of things you get is people don't treat the game 50-50 in a sense. There's probably more attacking things to do, but they do a lot less defending than they do attacking. Whereas all these things are a craft and art, the footwork, the getting in, the positional play. And so you have to put that emphasis on it as well and really focus on it. And then it's repetition. It then has to become habit. These things become habit. And then it becomes, depends on your culture. If you look at the Uruguayans in the World Cup, and it probably comes from being a smaller nation or something, but they are one of the best defensive nations. And when you watch them, they're defending in the first minute as if it's the last minute. That's their mentality, So, and they've all been like it, all the forwards, if you think of them as well, Suarez and Cavani and all that, they're all the same. They've got that warrior sort of mentality. It's part of who they are. Now, that's up to a coach to instill that in their own players. I mean, I found playing against European, South American teams, the Brazilians, for all their skills, was some of the best at that.
Yeah.
And what they used to do in tournaments, if they scored a goal against you, from the kickoff, they hunted you down. Someone either got a tackle, or they got a clearance, or they kicked it out of the stand. The whole team went up it. And it was like, it's like intimidation by, we've knocked you down by scoring a goal, and when I knock you down by being all over you again, So the mentality thing is vital, yeah.
Fantastic information, really, really rich and good detail. What we are going to do now is take this out onto the field. That is the difference with these podcasts. We've got action as well as words. So we'll be out on the field shortly, bringing some of these concepts to life. Before we close it off, quickly, Paul, best defender of all time in your eyes?
Beckenbauer for me was the best defender. He was a midfield player, a defender, everything, all-rounder. Some of the clips of him both attacking and defending were incredible. Yeah.
A bit more pressure, Mike. I'm going to force you into modern day. Best defender right now.
Well, there's been a few. Probably not right now because the game has just flipped a little bit, but certainly in my day, John Terry was a great defender.
Yeah.
Vidic, definitely a top defender. If I go back a little bit further, Steve Bruce for different attributes. I know there are a couple of Man United players there, but then you can look at people like Baresi, and you can talk about Beckenbauer. Beckenbauer was
the Arsenal team that you had battled against.
Tony Adams, definitely good defender, strong defensive mentality. And I think a lot of the success of those teams were built on defence, really. Don't give goals away, defend strong, and that's your basis of attacking.
I think one thing that is sort of neglected, and partly now due to the sort of, the restrictions that we have to have on heading and so on, but every team, really, top team, has had someone who can win the ball at the back. Vidic was the best penalty box. Terry, penalty box defender.
I think if you look now, Pepe's one.
Ramos was one. Puyol was one. Even in these real ball-playing teams, they had Tony Adams, and they've had, on nearly all the top teams. Van Dijk now. You've got to have it. Otherwise, it's a weakness for you. People can overlook that, and they just think, oh, well, it's not important. But if you don't have that, there's a story I was talking to Mick about, and before, was a guy called Warwick Rimmer. He was the youth development guy at Tranmere Rovers for years. They were getting lots of players out, even though they had lots of competition from Everton, Liverpool, Man United, Man City. They always did well. And I always used to sit next to him at games, reserve games, and they say, well, how did you do it? How did you do it? You know? And he said, well, this is the first one. He said, I always like to get my left back in first, recruitment. Like, left back? And he said, well, why is that? He said, well, it's very hard to find a good left back, and that helps balance your team and so on. So you can always get someone to fill in at right back. You can get a winger to drop down, a centre half or a midfield player, but a left back, it's not. And we look at, say, England, it's been difficult for England in the Euros to fill that position. It's really hard to get the right balance there. So then the next question I asked him was, well, okay, what next? And that was what he said. The next thing he said was, I like to have the best header of the ball on the pitch, because that's some advantage. If you think about it, can head them in at one end and score at the other end. I think even Real Madrid are winning all those European Cups. How many goals did Ramos score in the last minute?
And Ronaldo was one of the best defenders as well.
Yeah, and Ronaldo developed to be fantastic in the air. So it's still a really important quality, yeah.
Superb. We're going to take it out onto the pitch, turn words into action.